following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Rieger getting traded to Minnesota changes nothing.
6'4" guys running 4.4s. These guys don't grow on trees. And a lot of times I'm willing to bet on, especially, long term, on the freak athlete.
You don't ever want to overreact to what guys look like in preseason. There's been a ton of preseason all-stars that never make rosters or never pan out. There's the whistle. Good morning, Belly Up Fantasy Live. That means it's time to talk some more fantasy football. Good morning, everyone. I am Chase Thornton coming to you from the Mott and Bailey Basement Bar. This is Belly Up Fantasy Live. With me, as per usual, is Kevin Wilson down there. How we doing, Kevin?
We're doing good, and as we were just discussing, it's supposed to be warming up in Point South, so it should be a good week coming up, and I guess we'll have to figure out what we're going to do because this is the first, Sunday without football. And I guess we'll slog our way through it one way or the other. But other than that, life is good down here. And as always, I'm just glad to be here.
Excellent. Yeah, no, I haven't checked any of the daily countdowns yet to see, how so many days, 200 days till football or whatever else. But, I will be, I'll have to jump on that.
That'd be the depressing number.
Right. Yeah. Right now at this point, I might be a little saddened by that. So we might hold off on seeing that for a little while. I know it's going to be long enough. Time to turn attention, I guess, to baseball and basketball. You and I will be doing some fantasy baseball here coming up, but we still have football to talk about today.
Right.
We're coming off the Super Bowl. We're coming off Super Bowl 57. Good game. Good game. Chiefs
Good
38,
game.
Eagles 35.
Unless you were, a diehard Eagles fan, that was everything that you could possibly have asked for.
I had the Eagles picked, but
me too.
I wasn't necessarily cheering for them.
Which got blowed the doors off of that by, midway through the third.
Yeah.
So hopefully not a lot of people listened to my recommendations last week and rushed out to
hit the under
parlay because it didn't happen.
They blew past the over on that, and it just a good game a fun game to watch. A little bit of controversy we can talk about here with the pass interference call at the end there, the holding call at the end there. But if you were looking for a competitive game, how many times have we seen 49ers Broncos type Super Bowls, 51
what else
to
are you
whatever,
looking for but a competitive game? Unless
exactly.
Unless you're an Eagles fan,
right?
More, because I understand that. Because when the Seahawks went to the Super Bowl and they just absolutely blew the doors off in Denver, I enjoyed.
You
that
were in
game
love,
very much.
But
everybody else
was
right. And I enjoyed that game. There's probably like 18 people in the country besides Seahawks fans that enjoyed that game. But then the next year they played the Patriots, much better game, went right down to the last 28 seconds, whatever. And my jersey wound up on the floor, and I was very upset. And I didn't like that game, even though it was a much better football game.
Right.
But that's because I'm a Seahawks fan.
Right. No, I when the Packers went back to back with Favre all those years ago now. When they beat the Patriots that first year and we were rolling. That was fun to watch. But honestly, the next year too was a more competitive. That was a great football game against the Broncos and you had the drama of John Elway finally winning one. And would he retire after that game? And Terrell Davis coming back from his migraine headache and having just a great game. It really was a competitive, fun to watch football game. It pissed me off because I was a Packer fan. But
side note on that, I happened to be down in Australia when that game was going on at the casino. And I actually walked up to the guy and I'm like, okay, what's the line? And he was like, it's going to be Denver. It was something unbelievable. It's something Denver plus 14.
Yeah.
Something like that. And I'm like, I've had every dollar I took out of my wallet, put it down on there. I'm taking the Broncos. And of course they wound up winning the game outright.
Yeah, they did.
And so when I cashed that ticket in, I enjoyed that game very much more than you. So.
I remember I was a freshman in college that year. I watched that with my fraternity brothers in the fraternity house. But this game couldn't have been better from the NFL standpoint. You ended up having the top two seeds, the top seed in each conference. You had the probably top two contenders in the quarterbacks for the MVP award all season. They were the most fun to watch. Couple of high-powered offenses that actually delivered. And when you're the NFL, you can think of it 32 teams, but you've got 34 fan bases tuning in to watch this game. You've got the fan base for each team. Then you got those people that just kind of watch football or NFL fans but don't have a team. Year. But then you've also got the casual people that tune in because it's just a big event. It's the football game, and they're actually there maybe more for the commercials and Rihanna at halftime. But
I didn't watch a second of that, just so let's make my position clear on that. I was not the target audience for that.
No.
Okay.
No. By most accounts I've seen in terms of the performance, I did not personally watch it. I know that it got people talking. I know that it was her first performance in like 7 years, and she's pregnant. And good, wow, good on you. Good for you for that. I don't necessarily know that I'm the target audience for that either. I'm not necessarily a big Rihanna hip hop fan. I know she's good at what she does, and I understand too that when it's the Super Bowl, they're aiming for a little younger demographic than you and I, friend. They're aiming for the 18 to 35 year olds, and they're trying to get younger.
That's the way it is.
Right. I mean, I don't know. I didn't watch the show to have any criticisms of it that way, but you've got the people that tune in for that kind of thing too. And so for the NFL to have a good competitive game when all eyes are on them is so much better than one of those, 42 to 17
I thought
blowouts.
That game was over at halftime. And so for it to come out the way that it did.
Right. I'll tell you what, that game, there's so much that happened in that game. And I mean, Patrick Mahomes, 3 touchdowns Superman. Passing, but he just willed that team to victory on 1.5-ish maybe legs.
Yeah, maybe 1 1/4.
Just because they did not have anything going on the ground. They could not run the ball.
And they finally got it going with Pacheco, but that first half and the way he limped off the field, you're like, oh man, this is going to get ugly.
Pacheco had some hard runs and some good, he popped some big ones, but like in terms of just getting their momentum going, I mean, it was basically Pacheco busting some hard runs, and then just Mahomes, wishing things into existence, kind of. Now they were helped out a lot.
Who Jerick McKinnon was again? So
I
had said take the over on Pacheco catches. That didn't happen either.
No, he didn't.
But he ran
catch a
the ball.
Pass. Didn't have a target.
No, and the most amazing part to me out of that game was that Philadelphia came in there with 70 sacks on the season, and they never touched Patrick Mahomes. So if you, we could talk about the hold and talk about how Hurts fumbled or whatever else, but that was the key to the game to me, is they got no pass rush on a hobbled Patrick Mahomes, which is completely different from what Tampa Bay did to him a couple of years ago.
And that
was the key element of this game to me.
Do you remember a couple years ago, the offensive line was spoken of as the weak link on the Chiefs, and they were desperate to retool that thing.
It was justified because Patrick Mahomes was, he was running for his life against the Bucs. He wanted to run, and but they didn't. I don't even know if they hit him. They had no sacks whatsoever, and so Philadelphia fans, they were upset because of the hold call and whatever else, but that was the reason the Eagles lost this game, is because they got no pass rush.
Are we back? I'm back.
Okay.
I don't know what happened there. All of a sudden I was loading and you were frozen on my
end. Or, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, it was a sunspot. We'll blame it on
China
that.
Sending over more balloons over here. I'm not sure what was going on with that.
But we are back. We are still here. But no, we were talking about this Kansas City offensive line was a weakness for them, and they had worked to retool that. Well, coming into this game, the Eagles had the number 1 ranked offense by PFF this season, but the Chiefs had the number 4 offensive line. It's no longer a weakness, and they played well in this game. They played great in this game.
They absolutely did, and they made the plays in that second half that they needed to make, and they kept the because the Eagles had 24 points at half.
Right.
And they finished with 35. So they got shut down. And it could have been even worse because the one when he threw it and it was ruled that he didn't fumble. So they could have had a scoop and score right there. And so, I was also seeing how a lot of people were upset over the officiating, and we could probably get into that a little bit too. But those calls went against or for, I guess whatever your opinion is.
Whoever you are,
against both teams. And so it wasn't like, because I had read that, they want the Chiefs to win. And I saw some mimes where, the referee, after whatever his name was at the Kansas City parade and going down the street with the parade and everything. It's like, come on, guys, let's not get too crazy about this. So,
no, we had a ton of points in this game and a ton of great plays, but there could have been more even. I mean, you think about it, I gave my daily lineup last week and I ended up doing okay, but it could have been a lot bigger. I was big on Devontae Smith in this game. He caught 7 out of 9 targets for 100 yards, didn't score, but remember he had the one great big one there. If he doesn't step out at the 1, he gets the touchdown, and B, Jalen Hurts doesn't tie the all-time record with 3 rushing touchdowns in the game. But remember, he had the one in the first half too, where they called it a catch on the sideline, and then they overruled it, and I didn't necessarily agree with that.
Big yards that they could have added onto his total for the day. So
because I had him in my captain spot in terms of the
I remember you saying that
DraftKings showdown.
Out. You couldn't have been more than unless they called that catch.
If those 2 plays,
other than
gone
that,
my way,
he showed out in every possible way, and.
I also had Kenneth Gainwell, and they ruled Gainwell short on that first touchdown when it looked like originally they had called him in, and he was 6 inches short or so.
And then Hurts took it in,
But I did have Hurts on my team as well. I just didn't have him in my captain slot.
This
so I
game could have went one of 100 different directions.
There were a lot of woulda, coulda, shouldas because then, like you said, Nick Bolton just misses out on a second scoop and score when, in my opinion, quite honestly, it did look like a fumble. I don't think anybody would argue. I don't think the NFL can argue that Miles Sanders didn't catch that ball. That was a catch. It just wasn't a reception in terms of the rules. And that's part of my problem with the whole reception rule.
Yeah. I knew, based on the rule, it was not going to be a catch. So I was not surprised when they said it was an incomplete. So,
and I just think the layperson watching that, like I said, you got people tuning in that don't normally watch the NFL. The layperson sees that and says, well, heck yeah, that person caught that ball. There's almost no way to look at that where you can't say that he caught it. But like we said, it's not about catching the ball. It's about the reception and the process and everything that the NFL puts into that.
Right. It didn't look like he got, because to be a catch, you're supposed to catch it and, make
your football move or whatever.
Or whatever it was. And there was no football move before he got that second foot down, the ball was coming out. And, so I knew it was going to be no catch.
Yeah, and no, I think once we saw the replay in real time, it was pretty bang bang. And generally, when you have those kind of bang bang plays like that, you can. Those of us who've watched football can tell, that's coming back. But then the Devontae Smith play on the sideline.
With the call, so I had no issue with that whatsoever.
The Devontae Smith catch on the sideline, though, looked like a catch. A lot of people said they thought it was going to remain a catch. Did the ball move? Yeah, but how many times this year have we heard, well, the ball can move as long as the man doesn't lose control of it. And I'm like, well, how much more control can he have than to come down with it and come up with it? It's not like he lost it at any point in there. He had it. It did touch the ground. Yeah, it looked like it touched the ground, but so again, I'm not necessarily sure anymore always what a catch is. And I'm going back to, did Dez Bryant catch it or not? And again, I argued that day. You can go back and check it on Facebook. I put it on Facebook that day. I didn't have Twitter at the time, but I said everything in my being says that Dez Bryant caught that football, but according to the rule, the letter of the law by the NFL, he didn't. So I guess the same thing applied there for both Devontae Smith and Miles Sanders. So like you said, hurt the Eagles on the one play, helped them on the other, kept that game a little closer.
So it all balanced out there. And so I guess about the only thing there is left to talk about as far as calls are concerned, there's the one that's got people the most upset, and that's the holding call with, what was it, a minute and a half to go or whatever it was.
Gave them the first down, which allowed them to run the clock down to get the winning score.
Which leads to when he stopped at the 2 or 1, whatever it was, and went down and not scored. My wife was incredible. Why did he do that? Why did he do that? He could have scored, and I understand why he did that. And I was trying to explain to her, this is why. But I've always felt that if you have a sure score, get the score. Then whatever happens after that is fine, because you're assuming he's going to kick the field goal.
Right.
Which, because he missed when he bumped it right off the left upright.
We already had seen that in that game, and Butker had not had a great season.
No. Yeah. And for a team that scored 7,000 points, whatever, during the season, he was he was not the linchpin of that. And
he was not Mr. Automatic this season.
No, he was not. Injured so I was telling her, I understand why it happened. Because they wanted the clock to run. And Philadelphia used their last timeout, and then they just ran some plays and ran the clock off. So I got that. But if he had missed that field goal, you had a sure touchdown.
Yeah.
So
it's always a gamble, and we've seen guys do it. And from a fantasy standpoint, I mean, obviously some of these, stick right out. But seeing a guy take a knee on the 1 or run, break away for a 60-yarder and then down it at the 1 because we want to run the clock out,
right,
is always frustrating from our standpoint because we're thinking of the points that people are missing out on. But I'm with you as well. Where I feel like, man, when you got a score, you almost have to take it. Butker was only 13 of 18 this season on field goal attempts.
I thought he should have scored. I agreed with her that they should have just put it in there, even though it would have left them a minute and 30 some seconds on a timeout. And the way they were shutting down Philly, there was no guarantee they were going down 80 yards the other way.
Right.
And so, and that left a kind of a sour taste in your mouth that's the way that game ended. And so I understand it. But as far as the holding call, the guy involved in the play said, I held him. You could argue he held him twice on that play.
He said, I was hoping they'd let it go. But I think part of the reason he maybe was hoping that they would let it go is because they had been letting that kind of thing go the whole game. And that's I guess, the frustrating part of it is that it's a well-known joke by now, but that you could literally call holding on every play if you wanted. Whether you're looking in the secondary or whether you're looking at the line, you could call holding on pretty much every play. If you want to go by the dead ass letter of the law. Okay. But certain crews allow teams, in certain moments, even the same crew will allow teams to take that a little farther, or they'll tighten in on that. And that's a problem. If you haven't been calling that all game, and they hadn't been, why in that situation is it?
Maybe it's because, like I said, they held him not once, but twice.
He kind of grabbed him. Yeah.
And
hooked his arm around and then kind of had him again.
Then the argument was, well, the pass was uncatchable. Well, that's why it was holding.
That's why it was holding and not pass interference.
Then it would have been pass interference.
Either one of those is an automatic.
Either way, it didn't matter. Whatever the call was, they were getting an automatic first down.
You are correct.
So That's why they
Frustrating.
made the holding call and not pass interference, because the ball was, he didn't get anywhere near it.
Well,
So-
and I think some of it too is us getting greedy as fans because we had been we were treated to such a great game that everybody said, well, we were cheated out of seeing the Eagles maybe try and make a game tying or game winning drive after that. Listen, how much more do you want? The game was 38-35 and it
Yeah.
was won on a last second field goal,
Yeah,
dude.
you got 73 points. Man. If you bet the
Right?
over, then go
Let's
ahead and
just-
smash it and walk away.
Let's
and be happy.
enjoy that and hope that next year's is half as good and includes your team. Don't be too greedy. Okay. Yeah. But yeah, what a great game. And we haven't even brought up the idea that like Jalen Hurts just about won that game single-handedly for the Eagles himself. And it's so unfortunate that his fumble returned for a score essentially ends up being the difference in the game, because all of Philadelphia's offense, you want to talk about a team that couldn't run. I kind of said that, about the Chiefs. Actually, the Chiefs didn't run all that poorly, but the Eagles had nothing going outside of one Jalen Hurts. I mean, he led the team in rushing, threw for 300 yards, tied the all-time record in rushing touchdowns in a game. What more could that man have done?
Well, I've seen that before too, where, the fumble was the difference in the game. No, as I said earlier, the difference in the game was they got no pass rush whatsoever. So, because even if you say, okay, he didn't fumble, so then we have a tie game, right?
Yep.
And so what?
There's no guarantee they would have won. Yeah.
Stop Kansas City in the second half. They stop them, they win the game. It's as simple as that. And they couldn't put pressure on a hobbled Mahomes. I think that it boggles my mind that happened, given the fact that they were a terror on quarterbacks during the season. Like I said, they had 70 sacks in the regular season. And Daniel Jones didn't know what happened to him when they went up against the Eagles. And then they put up Brock Purdy in the very first quarter of that game.
Took him right out of the game.
Took him right out of the game. And so, they had a guy who I guess was out, in the parking lot throwing the football with his dad or whatever. And the 49ers were like, hey, we need you. Come on down.
like the NHL emergency goalie when they pull in the guy who literally runs the Zamboni or sweeps the floor, and he's their emergency goalie because he played it once in high school.
That's right.
Yep.
Which has happened. In an NHL game, that has actually happened before. But similar things, and they got nothing on Patrick Mahomes.
Number one
Especially
defense,
when they
top
saw
defense in
him
the league all
limping
year.
around just before halftime, I would have powered up that pass rush until he, his eyes were bleeding.
Blitz and everything else.
And it didn't happen. It didn't happen.
Because if nothing else, I mean, and we saw it. I mean, he ran through it. He ran through the leg in.
He did.
But there's no way you're 100%. You could say
There's
adrenaline
no
and everything
chance.
else you want to talk about.
I don't know if they, I'm gave him a shot or whatever it was, at the halftime. And I also was reading about how the, Rihanna, halftime show kept the halftime going longer than
the Super Bowl. You always know the Super Bowl halftime is longer. That's just how it is.
You know that. And so maybe they had extra time to work on it, whatever, because he came out and that first drive in the third quarter, he was going.
Yeah.
So
he did not show any ill effects of that. It was, one of those crazy moments, the Michael Jordan flu game or whatever else you want to talk about.
Yeah, we don't want to talk about that.
You might not, but no, it's one of those performances from Patrick Mahomes. But
I wonder afterward.
I hope it doesn't get lost.
If he was to play a game today, I bet that ankle would give him problems.
Right
afterward.
Right.
But they gave him one of those like at the end of the Karate Kid, where the guy comes in there and he's all.
Here we go.
And he just long enough for him to be able to finish the game off. Maybe that's what happened.
Right.
And
I just
So-
hope I just hope that Hurts's performance, and it's kind of an unfortunate. I mean, history remembers the winners, right? But to lose Hurts's performance,
No,
you know,
you can't do that.
in context.
3 touchdowns,
the
a
man
2-point
just had-
conversion.
Yeah,
What more could you have asked out of him? And if you remember before the game, I was saying, Jalen Hurts has not looked good in the 2 playoff games. And for him to come out and just blow the doors off the place,
right.
Philadelphia's got to be feeling pretty good about itself, despite the fact that they lost that game.
There were
They've
questions
got-
about him coming into this season. There were questions
That-
about whether he
that
could
was
be a
the whole
legitimate
question
starting
about
quarterback.
Philadelphia.
Yep.
They've got the offensive weapons, they've got a defense, and blah 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 blah. But can Jalen Hurts take the next step? Which of course turned out.
I
to
think
be
he proved that in
absolutely
every conceivable way. I think he proved that this season. Good for him. All right, let's take our first break here. We're going to listen to the good folks at Rex MD and see what they've got on store for you here. And then when we come back on the other side, we'll finish up the Super Bowl wrap up, and that'll lead us right into our next topic here on coaching hires around the league. But let's listen to the Rex MD here real quick.
Fellas, do you sometimes need a little help in the bedroom? Valentine's Day is just around the corner, and our sponsors at RexMD are here to help you make this the best night of your life. Erectile dysfunction is a common medical issue that over 30 million men in the U.S. tackle every day. We've all had those nights where we get too nervous and just need a little help. The doctors at RexMD will evaluate you online, no office visit needed, and ship medication directly to your door before the big day. With RexMD, they're here to help and provide you with real FDA-approved medications at the best price. Act now to take advantage of their Valentine's Day deal by heading to rexmd.com/bellyup. Our exclusive deal will save you up to 90% off, where you'll pay as low as $2 per dose on generic Viagra instead of $90+ on Viagra. That's RexMD/bellyup for 90% off. Your partner will thank you.
All right, we're back for phase
Well,
2.
I just want to,
Pop another one.
we've talked about when we were talking about the T-shirts, how not only we were a spokesman, we're also a client.
Yep.
That does not apply here.
Well, come on now. There's no
Yeah,
shame
so
in
if
it.
you're
But
looking for me to say, that's the greatest thing ever, I cannot say that, fortunately for me.
hey, if they want to send me a care package, I'm all for it. That doesn't bother me at all. I'll take whatever they want to hand out here. All right. So we've been talking about the Super Bowl and an interesting kind of postscript to the Super Bowl now.
Mhm.
3 of the 4 coordinators in that game are now coaching for other teams. We've had in the last week here, since we talked
Right.
last week, we've had the Cardinals and the Colts both finally name their head coaches. And we've had 1, 2, 3, 4. We've had at least 5 offensive coordinator hires in the league. Arizona, the Cardinals, they said they were going to announce their head coach sometime after the Super Bowl, and a lot of people thought that
Didn't take them long.
No, it looked like Lou Anarumo might get it, and then there was some other talk, but then they kind of come out of left field, and they hired Jonathan Gannon, the Eagles defensive coordinator, as their head coach. Defensive-minded coach. Makes some sense if you watch the Cardinals defense this season. They were absolutely terrible. But
Well, they were terrible all the way around.
they were terrible all the way around, but they were not a good defense. So they've hired a defensive-minded
Which they've had
head
good
coach.
defenses in the past. So
And that's an issue.
And
And
they
in
are
that
capable.
division, when you're dealing with Los Angeles and you're
That's
dealing
right.
with San Francisco now, you need to. I mean, you need a defense no matter where you play. But I mean, when you're
Right.
facing those
It's
2
like being
high-powered
in the
defenses
AFC
4 times
West.
a year,
Right.
yeah,
You
when a
need
quarter
a
of your
defense.
defenses, a quarter of your games are against that team, or against that caliber, that level of offense. And that walking in the door, regardless of who else you play in the year, you got 4 games against Sean McVay and against the Shanahan beast in San Francisco.
not to mention Geno Smith and
And the way that he
and
played
Walker-
this season, and the way it
Walker
looks
the
like they
third
might
and,
be
you
right.
know, the twin wide receivers up there in Seattle. So yeah, you got to play defense.
So they hired Jonathan Gannon, a defensive-minded head coach. There are questions about Kyler Murray, not just whether he's I mean, there's questions about his health coming into this season, but
Right.
there's also questions about whether Kyler Murray actually has what it takes to be the head of the franchise, the face of things, the leader,
there's
the
no
quarterback
answer to
they
that.
need.
There's no answer to that. And
Well,
the
they-
previous regime gave him, hey, we'll give you $67 million a year, whatever. And,
right?
we didn't, first we want you to study, then we don't want you to study. And who knows all of that stuff that was going on with them last year. And for my fantasy, I drafted Kyler Murray, and that was not a good pick.
So there's
All right.
some bitterness here, people. We got to
So-
take that with a grain of
well,
salt. There's
well,
some bitter.
Well, not really, because, and this is why, all right, because I picked up somebody in my league dropped Tom Brady. I don't know. We can argue whether that was a smart thing to do or not, but I picked him up, and because of that, I have.
There it is. So yeah,
There it is. So there's not a lot of
Boy.
sour grapes right there, because I did win my fantasy championship, and but it wasn't because of Kyler Murray.
You thought you were going to do it behind Kyler Murray. You ended up doing it behind Tom Brady in one last go around. The Cardinals do, though. The Cardinals make an interesting choice here then.
They
going
do.
with not just a young head coach, but then they made an offensive coordinator hire already. Drew Petzing, the quarterback coach for the Cleveland Browns, young guy, 35, I think. The quarterback coach for the Cleveland Browns, they bring in, and that's
That
going to
makes
be
you
their
go,
offense. That's their offensive coordinator.
Doesn't that make you just go,
Yeah, I wonder about. I mean, and again, I don't know much about the man other than the fact that he was a
But he
quarterback
had
coach for the
Jacoby
Browns. He's
Brissett
bounced
ready to
around the
play.
league a little bit.
So, if that's what you're going to go by, Jacoby Brissett looked good.
Jacoby Brissett looked. He handled Jacoby Brissett and that quarterback mess that they had this season, and that they kind of have been. But he handled that very well this season. I mean, Jacoby Brissett handled it well and handled it like a veteran. I will say that. I have not seen anything to. If anything, I have a lot more respect for Jacoby Brissett as a player, as not just as a player for his abilities, but as a person. The way he handled the entire situation this season in Cleveland, I loved what Jacoby Brissett did. But yeah, you're talking about his position coach, who had a big part in how they played through that and how they translated what Jacoby do to the field, and to come out of things as successfully as they did. I mean, they were still in the hunt when they finally got Deshaun Watson on the field.
Yeah, I guess we could make some statements about, because Deshaun Watson did not look anything like Deshaun Watson.
Right, but I don't know if anybody's going to coach.
So maybe
2
that
years of
kind of
inactivity
balances
out of
that
him.
argument. Yep, right.
Yeah,
And so
at the
maybe,
most important
we'll give
position
you,
in sports. But
right, we'll give you a pass on that just a little bit. But if he can do that with Jacoby Brissett, and they got to find out Kyler Murray.
they have to.
First of all, is he going to be healthy? And there's no guarantee of that. And then second of all, if he is healthy, where's his head?
Right. Is it in the
Right.
game, or is
And
it
then-
a FaZe Clan on, thinking about PS5? Yep. No,
Right?
I agree.
Because-
I think some people will have a question because Cleveland does not have a great quarterback history,
of course
especially
they-
recently. Some people
No, we
may
don't.
question the idea of bringing in the Cleveland quarterback coach to be your entire offensive coordinator and to rein in Kyler Murray.
Right. Because Dale, the guy that was on the show with
Oh,
us,
yeah.
and,
Yep.
and my friend who's a Cleveland Brown, we don't want his head to blow up because he might be watching the show and think about all the Cleveland quarterbacks that have
Well,
come
Cleveland
through.
is my second team as well. I mean, second team. People laugh about having two different fan bases. I like Cleveland. If it comes down to the two, I'm always going to cheer for Green Bay. But
Right.
Cleveland is my second team. They're my
That's right.
AFC team, if you want to think about it like
Same
that.
way
But-
if it's Seattle versus Cincinnati,
right? Yeah, you're going to go for the
it's
Hawks.
Seattle.
Yeah.
So
But interesting hire there. Interesting hire. We did see then too that because of DeAndre Hopkins staying with the Cardinals now, because of D-Hop's suspension last season, his no trade clause is voided. So Hopkins is available to be traded. Their top weapon on the whole team. He
if I'm
costs a lot of money
NFL general manager, I'm calling up Arizona to see
right now.
just
Exactly.
what's it going to take.
Exactly. He didn't. I mean, he still looks like D-Hop. I think he still looks like
He came back.
you know,
Remember, he came back and had 10 targets that first game back.
he
If I
8
remember right.
targets alive, and
Yeah.
they had other options there, even though they dealt with some injuries this season, but they have other options down there now. But that would be a big loss for a brand new rookie offensive coordinator, because like I said, he was not the offensive coordinator in Cleveland.
Yeah,
This is
so
their
if
quarterback coach.
I would say, hey, what's D-Hop's number? So I can call him up before everybody else does and say, hey, let's get together and
Right.
Yeah,
I would be getting on the line.
maybe what I'd want to do is go over to his house because I'm sure he's got a jacuzzi and stuff over there, outdoor barbecue, and sit there and just sit there and soak for a little bit and have your burger and your brew and just sweet talk to man for like 3 or 4 hours. And
Send your best players for send a contingent from the team.
Just make sure that Kyler Murray's nowhere near.
Like in the NBA when they're courting free agents, and they've done this in Dallas when they're courting free agents, and they send a contingent to the dude's house to hang out for a week. All right. So that's the situation in Arizona, though. We've got a rookie offensive coordinator, rookie head coach, but the Eagles now, one of the top offenses in football, coming off a Super Bowl loss, a Super Bowl appearance, are looking for an offensive coordinator or
and
defensive coordinator. But now they are also looking for an offensive coordinator because the Indianapolis Colts, after something like 150 hours of interviews with 378 different people across 6 months.
Yeah, I think they went to Alaska and Puerto Rico. And
they have finally landed on Shane Steichen, the Eagles offensive coordinator. So now the Eagles, coming off a Super Bowl appearance.
Nobody heard of any of those names that we're talking about. And
a couple of young assistant coaches
just before the game, the Super Bowl started, that he was hired. I saw that, and that's the first time I've ever seen the guy's name.
Right.
So,
well, the thing about Steichen is that apparently he wasn't necessarily running the whole show in Philadelphia, but he is young. He is coming off, a great year offensively. But he had great weapons to work with. The question for me is, coming into Indianapolis, is he being a rookie head coach? We know that it's hard for a head coach in the NFL to run one side of the ball and still run the whole organization.
Whole show. That's right.
When you're a head coach in the NFL, you are the CEO. It's hard to be the CEO and a department manager at the same time. And so, being a rookie head coach, who will he bring in as their offensive coordinator to help him run that side of things? Don't get bogged down in the idea that I have to run the whole thing on that side of the ball and forget about the rest of your team. Of course, Indianapolis they don't have Jalen Hurts as a quarterback. And that's a problem. They don't even have Kyler Murray as a quarterback.
They don't have a quarterback.
No, they've got Matt Ryan, who is, I think, just shy of you in age, maybe a little. Yeah.
Right now.
Right. He's just shy of you. He's just a little older than me. They've got him, possibly. He's been joking around that, maybe he should just retire on March 28th and embrace the whole 28-3 meme and go into the Hall of Fame possibly with Tom Brady, which is a funny thought. But they have him. They tried Sam Ehlinger. It didn't work out. They tried Nick Foles a little bit. I guess you could say they kind of tried Nick Foles. They don't have an answer right now long-term there at the quarterback position. And so you are coming from a place.
They don't have one short-term.
Yeah, all the weapons that the Eagles had, plus the top offensive line. Now you're coming to a team in the Colts whose offensive line was expected to be good, but underperformed. They've got a couple of weapons. Jonathan Taylor, if he's healthy, is one of the better backs in football. They've got some fun receivers. They've got some young, exciting, fun tight ends between Kylan Granson and Jelani Woods. And if Mo Alley-Cox sticks around, he's still 6'7". They've got weapons, but they don't have the most important one. They don't have the linchpin of the entire thing in that quarterback position.
So if you're, what's his name? Strickton? I can't
Steichen. Shane Steichen.
Okay, my bad. Steichen. So if you're him, do you call up Derek Carr right now? Say, hey, come on down.
You know, it might not be a bad idea. We keep hearing Carr, Carr supposedly visited with the Jets, and he went and talked with the Saints,
Right.
and he's finally been officially released now. So
That's right.
we don't have to worry about trade
you
clauses.
have to
or anything
admire
like
that whole way that he ran that situation. He's like, I'm not waiving my no trade clause.
Nope.
I'm not waiving.
Nope.
I'm not waiving anything.
You got to look out for number one, dude, because the
And
teams
so-
sure will.
Yeah,
The owners
so
and the teams are going to look out for themselves. Yep.
So
you got to
he,
look out for yourself.
he may well wind up with the Saints, but he was like, I'm not going to get traded to him.
Nope. I'm not going
And,
to. I'm not going to weaken
I'm
them.
thinking that
Yep.
if you're the Jets, and then the whole thing about, because your quarterback is in his dark dungeon or whatever it is he's doing over there right now,
Yeah.
and so he's supposed to emerge from that, and the Jets are supposed to.
I think he went
wait
in
around
Friday,
for
so he's
him.
on day 3 of 4 days
Yeah,
of
so
solitude.
day 3 of I guess it's kind of like the movie Scanners, where you go into this thing and it's like a water. You're floating in the pool of water or whatever, kind of like Minority Report, something like that. And so if I'm the Jets, I'm not waiting around for that guy
No.
to figure out what in the world it's escaping me right now. So if you need a quarterback and there's one available,
Yeah.
and he says, hey, I'll come play for you, go get him and let Aaron Rodgers float around for a couple more.
My only problem with Indianapolis calling Derek Carr is that that's
Derek
what
Carr.
they've done since they lost.
That's right. And so, but
Andrew
what other
Luck.
option do you have at this point?
right.
Because all the top quarterbacks are going to be off the board
Mhm.
in the draft.
I think
And
they need to
so-
figure out some way to make them. They need to. I mean, it's. I'm not blowing anybody's mind when I say that they need to find the answer at quarterback. That's what every team in the
Absolutely.
NFL. There's 32 teams that need to find that answer. There's teams that have that answer that need to still find that answer so that they know that they are solvent
Yeah.
going
At
forward.
least the other teams have the question written out so they can look
Right.
for the answer. The Indianapolis Colts have no question.
Ever since
They have
Andrew
no
Luck.
answer. And so
Yep.
they need to figure this out, and they need to do it. That's first thing. That's first priority. Get
Ever
out
since
there.
Andrew Luck retired and Snap retired on
Yeah.
them minutes
Yeah.
before the season
It,
kickoff.
it's been a sled.
They
that
have
just
not had
has
an
no, kind of like a Christmas Vacation, where
Right.
Chevy Chase got in. He shined up his sled or whatever with the stuff, and it turned it into a silver bullet going. There's just no stopping it. That's the way Indianapolis has had it since that happened with Andrew Luck. It has the plunge is still plunging, and it's a matter of fact, it's plunging even further now because they don't have,
Right. They don't
anything.
they don't
have
have they
nothing.
don't have the answer. I'm intrigued to see what the guy can do there. Like I said, they do have weapons. They need to find that answer at quarterback. I think their offensive line underperformed. I don't think that repeats. I think that
It
I
did.
think they have a
I
bounce
think
back
that's
season.
the kind of thing that can get straightened out pretty much in
Right.
a hurry. And
They've still got the talent. They just, I
and
mean,
so-
they dealt with injuries and they dealt
Absolutely.
with, they didn't, they had and their best running back,
and
Jonathan Taylor, was injured.
right, and
for
there's a
good
reason
portion of
why
the
he
year.
was the first pick in most fantasy drafts this year. And so
He will not
got
be
the
next
talent.
season, but we'll talk about that on another week.
That's right. We've got some weeks to put that together, but
So looking
he
around
obviously has talent. Obviously,
Oh, no,
he's got your running back.
you saw
and
that
it-
his first year in the league, and we
Yeah,
saw
and
we saw when he played. I mean, he's still Jonathan
this
Taylor.
year he
He'll be
showed
fine.
that, but he
He'll
just
be
wasn't
fine.
healthy. So
He'll be fine. He's got to stay healthy. He's got to be healthy. Looking around the rest of the league, then though, we have had 4 more offensive coordinator hires across the league that have happened since last week, and another one of them, like we said, 3 of the 4 coordinators from the Super Bowl are now on other teams. Eric Bieniemy, longtime rumored head coach candidate,
yeah,
and
he's
the
been
offensive coordinator
interviewed
for the Chiefs
15 times for head
Yep.
coaching position and has not
He
gotten it.
takes the offensive coordinator position with the Commanders in
Man, there's a
Washington.
lot of potential, dynamite. And then, there's the
Mhm.
good kind of dynamite where you're blasting through to get to the other side of the mountain so you can build your railroad or whatever.
Right.
And then there's the kind of dynamite that just blows up the mountain and it collapses on top of you.
It's been sitting around a while and it's leaking.
Yeah. So
yeah.
So and the perception is that Andy Reid is, why Patrick Mahomes is the way he is, and why Kansas City's offense is the way it is, and Eric Bieniemy is just kind of like standing there, putting up the signs of whatever they want to do. And so I think that's go into another situation is a good call for him. I don't think Washington's the place for it though, because
that'll be interesting.
And there is no Patrick Mahomes wait for you at the Washington Commanders, headquarters.
Like we just talked about with Shane Steichen, you don't have Jalen Hurts anymore. Well, Eric Bieniemy is not going to have Patrick Mahomes anymore, but he does go to a situation.
Chad Henne, maybe. You know what I'm saying?
Nobody has Chad Henne anymore because he retired with a beer in his hand,
but
with a Bud Light in his hand. Good for him.
And, he played when Patrick Mahomes got hurt.
Played well.
He looked good. And
beat the Browns last year, and then played well this year.
So they don't even have that, and so that's it. From what I understand, they made him not just the offensive coordinator, but the associate.
He's assistant head coach. Yes,
whatever that's supposed to mean. And so that gives him a little more, it's all about titles. Right. You know what I mean? So, I'm the assistant head coach.
It's all about titles, just as Nathaniel Hackett.
That's right.
He keeps getting hired because he was named a coordinator at one point.
Right.
But okay, so here's the question then, though, with Eric Bieniemy. Is this or does this become just a stepping stone to a head job? Or can he actually put something together there with Ron Rivera in Washington? Ron Rivera is on the hot seat, I think, coming into next season.
I don't think there's probably a hotter seat around.
Right. And so is this a stepping stone for himself? Or can he help this team? They've got some young, fun weapons on offense.
They do.
They've got some good receivers.
They got wide receivers.
They've got a good running game.
And
they don't have a quarterback again.
No.
But the difference between them and Indianapolis is that at least Washington does have a recent draftee in Sam Howell that they can at least evaluate and look at. They can figure out if they've got something. Now, Sam Howell was, what was it, 5th round draft pick? Was not a high draft pick. He was not a first rounder.
He did not stay up late on the first day of the draft.
He was not waiting for a phone call that night.
It didn't.
But they do have him, and they have named him the presumed starter coming into next season.
It always cracks me up when they name a starter, and it's 2 days after the Super Bowl.
It's freaking February.
Right.
So this guy's going to play for us in September. This guy may not be able to walk by September. Yeah, well, let's calm down. Yeah, it's one thing, especially when it's a change in regime and a change in the player itself. It's not like when you've got Tom Brady coming back, or that you have whoever XYZ coming back, when they're going to turn the reins over to a rookie, essentially a rookie. I mean, the dude, they hardly know what they have from him because they didn't see him a ton this season.
Right.
But they have named him the starter. But at least they have that young option to evaluate, which they don't have in Indianapolis. And so that intrigues me there.
And so
I'm wondering what will happen.
Interesting, because this needs to work out. If Eric Bieniemy is ever going to be a head coach, this needs to work out for him. Because if it slides off the mountain, he's already
then his hype wave may have passed him by. Yep.
Right. He won't get a 16th. This needs to work for him. And I think it's a good, like I said, and I want to put aside all the stuff about, he's a black head coach and nobody wants him because of that. I don't think that's true. 15 times he got interviewed.
I would certainly hope not, because he's obviously worked his way into that position. Yeah.
Right. And so, we were talking about it on the Super Show, and it just, you come to the conclusion, maybe he's not just, it doesn't interview well, and people don't. Right. So, I've gone into interviews and walked out going, damn, man, what was I thinking right there?
Well, and the opposite is true. You can be an interview all-star.
That's right.
And talk and sweet talk your way into a job and come in day one and not show it.
you don't know A through Z, and I think it's been also pointed out that when, and it's just not the NFL, it's anything that a lot of these things are because of relationships, right? That's why Jeff Saturday got that position, because
Literally.
he had a relationship with the head coach, the owner. And also because I think
a friendly phone call turned into a job offer.
Right. And any other, like I said, any other coach that went in Indianapolis that was an actual head, coaching material, and and Indianapolis went off the rails as they did, has no head coaching prospects whatsoever now.
Right.
And so you better be happy that Jeff Saturday got that position, because he goes back to the booth and whatever.
Right.
And and it's
he's not bad on television, but it's not a head coaching job.
No. And he's fine in the booth and everything. And there's nothing that I admire the guy.
Right.
But and like I said, people didn't get that though, because if they had given it to like Reggie Wayne, who was, a coach on their staff.
Right. At least was a coach in the league at some point.
It was at least as the coach, because that team was going to fall off the mountain. Didn't matter if Muhammad came down. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, Reggie Wayne, if he had taken over that position, would have no chance.
Yeah, they wouldn't have fared much better under anybody else. I agree with you there.
Yeah.
I agree with you there. Well, so we've got Eric Bieniemy in Washington. There were 3 other hires this week that were made across the league. Baltimore brings in Todd Monken, who had been the offensive coordinator for University of Georgia the last couple of years. Won a couple
of. Have an A above your head, University of Georgia,
right?
A
couple of national championships.
That's right.
It's coaching guys that have played in the league.
Yeah. So it's kind of like Batman in a signal. Hey, you need somebody? Here I am. And
Carolina brings in Thomas Brown, the Rams assistant head coach. An interesting one for me, though, was literally just announced this morning, hour before we came on the air, actually. Houston and new head coach DeMeco Ryans. He reaches into his, speaking of relationships, back into his bag of tricks and goes through his Rolodex. He's going to bring in Bobby Slowick, who had been the passing game coordinator for the 49ers. So a co-coach with him on the 49ers staff, and a good team. We know that. Their pass game coordinator, Bobby Slowick, is now going to be the Houston offensive coordinator. I think that's a fun hire.
Brock Purdy's picture on his resume, and that works right there.
Right? Look what we were able to do with Chunk, these guys.
Okay. I don't need to see anything more. You're hired.
So now the question becomes for me, again, maybe there's been a pattern here. I don't know if anybody's picked up on it, but these teams that have coordinator questions, teams that have offense questions, have quarterback questions, have coordinator questions, have head coach questions. What's the common denominator there, folks, that runs through everything? So again, we're talking about Houston. We're talking about the quarterback position now. Davis Mills.
Houston needs to figure out who they're going to take in the draft, because they are in a position.
It sure looks that way. Davis Mills
they are in a
looked okay his rookie year.
One of these guys that we talk about at the top of the draft, and so these other guys are searching for veterans that they may not ever find, but they're going to get a quarterback that they check out and they like and everything else, and even if the rumors are they're going to try and trade for that top overall pick, even if they don't do that, I think they'll get. Well,
they're going to have to figure out something. Davis Mills took a step back this year from what he had looked like he was going to be his freshman year. Now, obviously, that team was not great top to bottom. They didn't have a real consistent running game. Dameon Pierce emerged as a legitimate NFL running back, but then he got hurt. Their defense didn't play up to the standards that we've seen the Texans defense play.
When you don't have a good offensive line.
Right. So they need, again, there's a team with a new coordinator that needs to find the answer or determine if they have the answer at quarterback. But I like the fact that Ryans brings along a guy with whom he's worked before, that he knows. The pass game in San Francisco, like you just brought up, didn't matter who they threw back there until until they were literally on guy off the
Yeah.
street mode in the championship game. But they were able to withstand the loss of their presumed starting quarterback in Trey Lance, maintain their standing through Jimmy Garoppolo. Then when he got hurt, they were able to bring in literally the last guy anybody would expect,
That's right.
the Mr. Irrelevant, and maintain that momentum all the way almost to a
Not only
Super Bowl
maintain
run.
it, but throw down the throttle. And
Right.
as you pointed out, he threw 2 touchdowns.
2 touchdowns like clockwork.
every game
like
until
clockwork.
he threw 3 and messed
Right,
up the
yeah,
whole
right.
equation.
Yeah,
So,
back-to-back games.
That's
in
what
the
I'm saying.
playoffs.
Just a big picture of Mr. Irrelevant.
Yep.
Say, why should I hire you?
Here's my
That's my offensive
here's my
coordinator.
resume.
Here he is right here. And
Right.
okay, you're hired.
All
No
right.
other than that, we don't need to interview anyone else. You're hired.
All right, we're gonna hear from the fine folks of Manscaped real quick here, and then when we come back on the other side, we will talk about our positional MVPs for the season in fantasy, and then we'll let all of you get back to your lives. But first off, like I said, let's listen to our good friends over at Manscaped.
We have breaking news. Manscaped now sells beard products. That's right. They are once again revolutionizing men's grooming with the brand new Beard Hedger Pro Kit. From a beard trim to a fresh shave, the technology behind the Beard Hedger Pro Kit allows you to shape your signature beard look. Now you can finally use Manscaped products to make your drapes match your carpet by going to manscaped.com and using the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY for 20% off and free shipping. It's time to tame your mane. No one likes a weird beard, so say goodbye to all your stubble and trouble with Manscaped Pro Beard Kit. It all starts with the Beard Hedger. This thing is a juggernaut of fixing faces. First off, this cordless trimmer has a rotary wheel that gives you 20 hair cutting lengths, all with one guard, so no more messy drawers full of extra add-ons. That's right, face grooming doesn't need to be hard. Get 20 different beard lengths in just one guard. Plus, it's waterproof, so you can shave in the shower to avoid all that hair in the sink. The titanium-coated T-blade is tough on hair but smooth on your face, leading to single-stroke efficiency that brings satisfaction one stroke at a time. So make sure you get 20% off and free shipping when you go to manscaped.com by using the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY. Once again, that's 20% off and free shipping when you use the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY at manscaped.com.
There we go. Thank you to
There we
Dan
have it.
Mader for that. Gentlemen, like we've said before, hey, you got your beard, you got your basement. If you're using the same thing on both of them, you're doing it wrong. As the Offspring said almost 30 years
Yeah,
ago, you
hopefully
got to
that's not
keep them
what's happening.
separated. So get on there, use that Belly Up Fantasy promo code, get yourself some of the fine equipment that they have over there. We've got the products ourselves. I've used them. You heard Duck last week. He loves the beard stuff. Again, still waiting for mine to get a little bit longer here. Maybe it'll happen someday. I've had the beard before. It'll come back again. Patience, Grasshopper, patience. All right. So real quick here before we sign off and let everybody get back to their lives here, I'm curious to know who you saw as your MVPs at each position for fantasy this season. You can go the easy route with who scored the most points or whatever, but sometimes it's about more than that. It's about who emerged or who bailed you out or who came out of nowhere and was a 13th round pick that won you your league. So I'm curious. Let's start at quarterback, the starting point for everything in fantasy and in real football here. Who do you have as your quarterback MVP this year in fantasy?
Well, I think, and this is going to sound like a homer pick, because as everybody's aware, Seattle
go.
Seahawks are my team.
There you
But
go.
when you talk about value out of a position, nobody gave you more value than Geno Smith, right? Because you could get him off the waiver wire, let alone draft the guy.
Oh, big time.
Because I remember we were talking way back in the beginning. You had him at like QB 35 or something.
It was almost a joke because
Yeah,
I think a lot of
it was
people
a
expected Drew Lock to eventually take that over.
Right. And so from QB 35 and a joke, he finished the season as QB number 8.
Yep. Yep.
And so there was no more value to be found anywhere else at any position than Geno Smith was. And so
You got a top 10 quarterback off a guy who was on the scrap heap.
That's right.
In real life and in fantasy, a guy who was on the scrap heap. I don't think anybody expected him to hold that job
even if
longer
you
than he
let's
did.
say you were a guy that had somebody like, Allen or Mahomes or one of those guys, and you picked up Geno Smith off the waiver wire, and then he balls out and you turn him into a trade.
Yep. Look at the value you picked up there.
There's value you picked up right there. So Geno Smith in the league was the MVP of my team. Of course, it was Tom Brady because he rode in, and even though he was rickety as an old Ford, coming down,
right?
Some of those plays that he was making, he got me to the position where I could cut Kyler Murray and say, later, dude.
Yeah.
And he, got me to the championship. So.
No, you know what? You make a good argument for that pick. And that, like you said, if you want to focus on the value portion of most valuable player, it's hard to argue with Geno Smith in terms of what he gave you for what you had to spend for him and what he allowed you to do. Like you said, if you had one of those higher name quarterbacks and picked up Geno Smith, you were able to turn one of them around, possibly, depending on how your league operates, if guys bid on the line or not, but you were able to turn one of them around possibly for better value at other positions, which only increased the value of that current guy. I'm going to go, I have a little bit more chalky pick here. I'm going with Jalen Hurts. I love the fact that
because
I love the fact that he,
I believe, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And
I love the fact that he increased
his
efficiency numbers this year. He
missed
was
some
efficient.
games. So QB3,
come
on down.
Points per game, I think he even outscored Patrick Mahomes, to be dead honest with you. In points per game, like you said, though, he missed a few, which hurt. But, I mean, you're talking about a guy whose efficiency numbers looked good across the board. And he also ran for 760 yards and 13 touchdowns. And in today's day and age, if you've got that quarterback that can run, you've got a guy that is going to give you that consistent weekly floor. I've talked about it all year. I beat the drum all year for Daniel Jones on that count. And obviously Jalen Hurts leading the league in quarterback rushing touchdowns and being among the league leaders, period, in rushing touchdowns. He gave you a weekly value that you couldn't find a whole lot of other places. There were only 5 games this year he didn't score a rushing touchdown in. And
that's right.
Had over in playoffs and had a rushing touchdown in each of the 3 playoff games, including 3 in the Super Bowl. I love that floor he gives you.
Yeah, and in my league, he was drafted 89th overall.
Right. There were questions coming into the year.
Built-in value,
none coming out.
So if you're one of those guys that we preach to all the time about waiting, don't take one of these guys. And he was drafted 89th, and he averaged just short of what you were saying about Mahomes and points per game.
Right.
But if you were to take Patrick Mahomes, you'd have to have used a 3rd-round pick to get him.
Yep, as opposed to a 9th-round pick. Yep.
So when it comes to value, Jalen Hurts blows the doors off of Patrick Mahomes.
All right. Let's move on to running back then. Who was your running back most valuable player this season? There were several good candidates here, I think, depending on what you value personally, or depending on whether you're looking at PPR or standard, but who was your positional MVP?
In PPR, it's what we were just talking about value, but Austin Eckler was the PPR champion simply because, right, he catches the balls that a lot of these other guys don't do. And but if you're talking about value to me, then we're talking about Josh Jacobs of the Raiders, because I got it right here. He was drafted 55th overall in our league, and a lot of people were saying, no, that was too. I thought that was crazy talk going into the league.
You were not alone.
I was big time on Josh Jacobs.
Yeah.
And seeing as how he had no deal after this year, and the Raiders ran him into the ground, just as we predicted.
We thought he would. Yeah, we thought they were going to run him into the ground.
And he averaged 19.7 points per game, RB3 on the season, and he had some huge games coming down the stretch. If you were like one of those guys like me, I was the last team to make the playoffs in my league. So you needed all the help you could get. So Josh Jacob, I didn't draft him. I wish I had. Somebody got to him before I did. But he returns value, even though he's not one of the guys that like Jerick McKinnon. You could get off the waiver wire. He was huge for me.
You had to draft. You had to
pick him
draft
up.
Jacobs.
Yeah. Yep. Josh Jacobs to me is the MVP at the running back position.
No,
Regardless
I like the angle that you've been taking with these first two picks here in terms of, like you said, the value and what you had to pay for the guy versus what you got out of the guy. Jacobs was one that I seriously considered, and yeah, Eckler had the number one. He was top overall.
That's because he
in
scored
terms of
18
PPR.
touchdowns.
But I'm going maybe a little less chalky, but than Eckler. But I'm going to go with CMC. I'm going to go with Christian McCaffrey.
Okay.
I think, there were questions. We've had questions, justified questions for several years now
Him
about
and
his
Saquon
health
Barkley both.
and what you were going to get out of him. We knew that a healthy Christian McCaffrey is unlike maybe any other weapon in the league. And he showed that this year. But the interesting and fun thing is that he showed it on two different teams. He was having a good enough year in Carolina that San Francisco said, yeah, let's go out and get that. And when he hit the ground running, literally hit the ground running in San Francisco, he brought a fun dimension to that offense. And I think that he played a big role in the idea that they could operate with their second and then third string quarterback. Remember, they were talking about in that championship game that he was going to maybe have to take every snap from center after Purdy went down until he came, and after Josh Johnson went down until Purdy came back. But you're talking about a guy that after several years, lost years essentially to injury, rushes for 1,139 yards and 8 scores, but then also comes back with 700 plus receiving yards, 5 scores there, and really allowed them, again, with Deebo Samuel, the two best Swiss Army knives in the entire league.
That's right.
Just brought a fun dimension to that offense that almost took them to the championship.
Right.
From a fantasy standpoint, that was fun to watch. He had some big outputs. You can count on him in daily because, again, like Eckler, he's going to catch the ball. So if they can't run, which San Francisco's offensive line, they can run, but if they can't in any game, he's still going to be a big part of the passing game and vice versa. So I was very happy to be able to see the resurgence of CMC.
There's not a guy that's easier to root for than him.
Right.
So I agree with you. It was 100%. It was good to see him, get back on the beam. It's good to see him. It was Saquon Barkley, which we could argue
again
almost was as valuable.
He was one I considered as well. Exactly. All right, let's move on to wide receiver then real quick. Who was your wide receiver most valuable player? This I'm interested in. I'm interested to see the angle you take with this one.
This is as chalky as it gets, all right, because my team MVP was Justin Jefferson. And I picked him at spot number 5. And a lot of guys were like, well, that was too early, maybe, later in the first round. But I took him, and he was the only, let's put it this way, he was the only non-quarterback to be considered for NFL MVP.
Right.
So you knew going in you're going to get 20 points. Let me see, I could tell you that. He averaged 22.4 points per game.
Stepping off the bus.
Cracks me up when they come up with the 0.4s and all that in fantasy football, but
right. But you knew it. Yeah, like you said, you knew you were over 20 stepping off the bus with Justin Jefferson.
So it doesn't matter what was happening and everything. So you knew wide receiver 1, no problem.
Right.
And so if I didn't draft Justin Jefferson, there's no way I make the playoffs. There's no way that I don't think I would make the playoffs, given some of these guys that got hurt in the first round. And so Justin Jefferson, I know is chalk. It's as chalk as it comes, right? And so it's like, in the Final Four, if Duke is there, well, I'm going to take Duke. As chalky as it gets, but Justin Jefferson is by far the wide receiver MVP.
Can't argue with any of that. I mean, you're talking about a guy that went over 30.7 times this season. 1,809 yards, 128 catches, 8 touchdowns receiving. He even ran for a touchdown this season. And Justin Jefferson is not Tyreek Hill and Kadarius Toney and Deebo Samuel, where he's going to be getting, the ball on reverses and everything a ton, but he even ran for one this season. I mean, he did everything. He is by far the best offensive weapon that team has. He's one of the best weapons in the league, and he's still only 23 years old. 23, 24. I mean, 24, just turned 24 actually.
Yeah.
You cannot argue with that. I mean, there were other guys that were fun to watch, and there were other guys that can make, make big plays in that. But Justin Jefferson, in terms of his consistency and in terms of just the sheer talent that he brings to the field, I agree with you completely. It's chalky, but what do you want us to go do? Go argue for Devontae Adams, who disappeared at times this season?
He did, he'd have monster games, and then all of a sudden 8 points.
Tyreek Hill was across from Jalen Waddle and had a great year, but he was across from Jalen Waddle and had everything going for him there. Stephon Diggs, none of them measured up to what Justin Jefferson brought to you on the field this season. So we've come for you. I love that you went value with your first two, and you can't argue necessarily with your third pick either with Jefferson at wide receiver, because even if you took him as a first round pick, he returned first round value. Finally, there's talk, and he is going to be definitely in the mix, especially in PPR formats next season. He's in the mix for that top overall player, because if we've seen anything this year, it's that the running backs that we all used to gravitate to and that we've all kind of, almost took for granted that they were going to be like the top guys. The injuries and the inconsistencies there really don't allow that argument to hold up, whereas wide receiver seems to be ascending in terms of its importance in fantasy. So Justin Jefferson is going to be in talks for the number 1 overall pick last year. If you took him number 1 overall this year, he did not disappoint you.
No,
as opposed to Jonathan Taylor,
him,
as opposed to
or 6th or 8th, whatever it might have been.
Right.
And everybody was talking about, of course, the LA Ram superstar, and he should be the first one off the board. He was not. He was available, but I didn't pick him. I picked Justin Jefferson.
And it
turned out
nobody could have foreseen that, but no, Jefferson was an outstanding pull.
But everybody did see that he wasn't going to return the value that he did. Of course, there was no way, because he set the record with the most yards.
It's hard to repeat perform
he wasn't going to do that 2 years
an all-time season, right? Doesn't matter what position it is.
Right.
It's hard to repeat a record-breaking all-time season. That's
kind of like
it's a record-breaking all-time
Judge
season.
In baseball, which we have whole lots of baseball to come. Aaron Judge is not going to hit 62 home runs this year.
Right. How many times has that happened in history, folks?
That's right.
There's a reason for that.
That's right. So right. I don't think that's much of a limb that I'm going out on.
Even the guys who hit 60 in the past were hard pressed to repeat that performance. Let's move on real quick then. Let's finish it up here. Tight end. Who was your positional MVP this season at the tight end position?
Because the chalk pick obviously is certain Kansas City tight end, and but I'm not going to go that way, because there was a guy who, by the name of, I don't even know what TJ stands for. Do you? TJ Hawkinson?
No, I honestly don't. I don't either.
Okay, so
good question.
Tight end number 2, right? And you could have had him at pick number 71, right? And he returned tight end 2. So he was bigger tight end than Kittle, than Andrews, which if you drafted Andrews, you were absolutely disappointed in him.
And I was
even though
in the leagues.
he returned tight end for value, but that's because the tight end position, as we all know, might as well, it's like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, except it fell over. You know what I'm saying? So T.J. Hawkinson, especially after he went and joined Minnesota, because he was in great positions either way,
right?
Whether he was in Detroit or wherever, and so he got you the numbers that you were looking for without having to use a top pick to get them.
His big game of the season, his biggest game of the season actually came with the Lions against your Seattle Seahawks when he put up almost 40 there, scored a couple of touchdowns in week 4.
How about 41 fantasy points?
Right, okay. In week 4.
All right. In week number 4, he had 179 yards, 2 touchdowns, targeted 12 times.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at the numbers. He was targeted 16 times against the Giants. He was targeted 12 times against your Green Bay Packers, 10 times against Buffalo. So,
and the thing, I think, like you said, the key to everything is that when he got to Minnesota, I mean, he's fit in seamlessly with that offense. There was no ramp up period where they had to get used to him. He just took off and hit the ground running, meshed immediately with Kirk Cousins, fit in with what they wanted to do. I think he gave them the dimension they were hoping that Irv Smith would give them this season. And he only scored in 4 games this season. But it's just like you said, with the number of targets that he was seeing and the fact that he caught those targets, he was so good at anything that was thrown at him. He snagged out of the air that, I mean, it's hard to argue with that. He was a big presence for both of the teams that he played on this season. I think everybody thought that the Lions would roll over and die when he left. They had to change their operating system. They ended up using 3 tight ends where they had T.J. Hawkinson, but Thomas James is apparently what TJ stands for. Thomas James Hawkinson is definitely in consideration for top tight end to pick next season, coming into next season. You mentioned the chalky pick. That's the pick I went with. It's just so hard to argue with Travis Kelce and what he brings to the table. But TJ Hawkinson, there's always that question: is how long can Kelce keep this up?
Right. And so, when you're talking about targets, when it comes to Kelce, 9, 7, 8, 10, 8, 10, 8, 17,
152
7, 10, 8,
targets
6, 9, 10, 8, 10, 7.
Right.
So, yeah, so there's no way you could, argue against Kelce, because he's clearly, and it's not really close, the top tight end in the game.
6th in the league in targets overall. 6th in the league in targets overall.
He's top 5 tight end all time.
Yeah.
And so
just an outstanding season for him. Had almost a 25% target share on that offense, in an offense where Patrick Mahomes does a beautiful job. If people haven't paid attention, you need to pay attention. He spreads the ball around so well.
They had no wide receivers in Kansas City, but he still balled out because he had
Patrick Mahomes led the league in touchdown passes and didn't have a leading wide receiver on that team. Right. That's how well he passed the ball around and distributed the ball. But even in that environment, Travis Kelce had a 24.8%.
Any of those Kansas City wide receivers in fantasy.
Right?
Nobody.
No. So that's why I go Travis Kelce. But TJ Hawkinson, being younger, and like you said, he had such a big impact especially after he got to Minnesota. And with what looks like maybe the decline of Adam Thielen. Adam Thielen is getting older. He was not the Adam Thielen we've seen in the past.
Yeah.
TJ Hawkinson may be their second option on that
players team. In fantasy this year. Mm-hmm. Adam Thielen has to go right to the top of the list.
He was disappointing, but with that situation and with the way that Hawkinson meshed in so well, Hawkinson deserves some talk as next year's, he's definitely a top 3 tight end going into next year's into
You're
next
not going to
year's
get him
draft.
at pick 71 next year.
No, you will not. All right. That's going to do it for us today. We're going to wrap it up this week. Now, a reminder, next week, we're going to take a step back. I think we're going to breathe
Certain
in
of
this
us are going to be in
post-Super Bowl.
Florida, and
That's right. Yours truly will be in Florida with the family, but we're going to take a break. We're going to breathe, catch our breath,
that's right.
close the book officially on the 2022 NFL season. We will come back the following week and start looking ahead to next season. But in the meantime, Kevin, where can we find you and what do you got going on?
Well, baseball fantasy show number 2 is tonight at 7 p.m. along these same stations. And Vince and I will be ranking our first and third baseman, top 10. And he's already said we're going to have a lot to discuss because apparently we are have some differences there. So
perfect.
So you definitely want to check that out. And I always have an article that comes out, and especially in the Belly Up Fantasy side, there are a lot of people in the in baseball in general, fantasy too, but baseball in general. There's a lot of guys that are settling in at Belly Up, so there's going to be a lot of content on baseball this year. And I keep seeing people saying, "Hey, where can I find baseball content?" Right here,
Belly Up Fantasy Sports,
and the fantasy side, both. You will find content. So get over there to both sides, check it out. That there's always some good reads going on over there.
That's right. It's that time of year.
I can hawk my stuff all day long, but it's not just me. There are a lot of guys that are producing content. So check it out.
There you go. I agree with you. Check me. You can find me. You can find all of my colleagues over there. BellyUpFantasySports.com. Check that out. Keep checking out Belly Up Media here for as Kevin said, podcasts for baseball, for football, for NASCAR,
even though football is
soccer,
over,
anything, college basketball, anything.
Check it out. Yeah.
Anything
March
you want,
Madness
head over there.
is right around the corner. So
that's right.
You know what I mean? So everybody's going to need to get their brackets ready to go. And so I'm sure there'll be some talk about that.
Tune in. All right. Find me on Twitter always, STT Chase, FFB. You can find Kevin at Kevin62WillC. And after a week hiatus, as we said, no show next Sunday, but after a week hiatus, we will see you back here. Same bat time, same bat channel. Until then, everybody, we are going to wish you Slanjava.
That's right.